This is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously.
All right, Raider Nation, welcome back to the Silver and Black Today podcast. Yes, we haven't done a pure podcast in a long time, but we're all stuck in the house because of this COVID-19 coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it a pain in the ass, as it disrupts everybody's life and it just messes with people's heads. But here at Silver and Black Today, besides the radio show, which we are now doing remotely, if you were with us Sunday, we talked to Alec Ingle, we talked to Vinny Bonsignor about the Raiders free agent. So we continue on. We want to give you guys something to listen to while you're stuck at home with the family or stuck at home by yourself or wherever you may be. For those of you who are healthcare workers, sanitation workers, working in grocery stores, thank you for all that you're doing to keep this country going, at least at the minimum now, as I know that's a huge sacrifice. You're putting yourself at risk, so we appreciate that very much. But we wanted to jump on this one. I was texting back and forth with my co-host, Kelly Kreiner, who joins me now. Kelly, how you doing, man? Are you like me, wearing your pajama pants like 3 days in a row?
Dude, I've been bathrobe life, man. Like, seriously, I haven't had my contacts in 5 days.
Nice.
Just basically lounging. I'm sitting out on the balcony smoking cigars and drinking all day. It's not the worst.
I know. It's like I've been going outside. The weather today in Las Vegas is nice. It's starting to pick up windy. It's supposed to get cold for a couple of days, and then we're going to hit 80, I think, next week. So, and by the way, there was some research that came out that said that vitamin D is good to help your immune system against this virus. So get some sun if you can do it. But yeah, the thing is, Kelly and I are both cigar smokers, premier cigar smokers. We're not smoking backwoods smokes or any of that stuff. What we're smoking is good cigars. And I was just reading, because of this too, you know, production of cigars around the world has now stopped for the most part. And so there's a shortage coming, buddy. It's going to come after we're probably back to normal, and then we want to go out and sit in the lounge. We're not going to be able to get a good cigar.
Yeah, the shortage will be a few years down the road, though, because of most of the stuff that you have on your shelf has been aged for 2 or 3 years before you're even getting to the shelf. So it's not something you're going to feel for a little while.
Yep.
And then, I mean, if it gets to that point, you'll just see them ramp up production before then take some stuff out that maybe doesn't have quite the age on it.
Yeah, I know it'll be a different world, but that's okay. We want to make sure everybody's good and everybody's getting healthy. But speaking of healthy, one of the things that Kelly and I were texting back and forth about as we talk about Raiders football is, over the last few days, I have seen my timeline inundated with people. This includes fans. This even includes some people who create content, saying that, you know, boy, the Raiders moving to Las Vegas hasn't helped their cash flow. They're cash poor, and it's because Mark Davis doesn't have a lot of money and all this kind of stuff. So we wanted to just spend some time with you today on this special podcast to talk about that, because I'm just kind of dumbfounded that people don't understand or look into. And believe me, if there's any person in the world that is worse with numbers than I am, help me find them, because I am not a numbers guy. I'm the other side of the brain. But I do know enough and try to teach myself and learn about economics, not only in the NFL, but overall. And I'm trying to kind of look at folks and say, are you not paying attention? Do you not understand how things work? And are you missing the point of sort of the Raiders and their philosophy under Mike Mayock and John Gruden? And what I mean by that, and I'm going to jump right to you on this, Kelly, is the assertion that the Raiders are cash strapped, that the Raiders are cash poor, is an incorrect assumption in my view, because of their recent signings, including the big one, Corey Littleton at linebacker, and Nick Kwiatkowski and all these guys. They're not paying huge bonuses up front. They're not paying a lot of cash. And so people have jumped to the conclusion that, coupled with not signing guys like Byron Jones or Chris Harris or some of these other guys that are out there, that they can't afford to sign them. And my point of view, Kelly, is that it's not that they can't afford them. They just don't want to overspend. Am I wrong on that?
No, and that's the biggest thing you need that people need to realize. There's a difference between being cash poor and just not wanting to spend a ton of upfront cash. You know, they have enough cash to where they could have made any one of those deals go through. You know, you hear that the Byron Jones thing, they offered more per season, but the Miami gave him more upfront. Miami's guaranteeing him over $40 million for the first 2 years, which is kind of crazy. That's something that you really don't see that often, that much, that quick. So that's what got that deal done. You know, they they've had issues in the past, especially when you get into those big signing bonuses where you stretch those out for years. They were paying Jerry Rice for 2 years after he left. They've been known for paying players that weren't on the roster 3 and 4 years after they were gone because of salary cap hits. You know, they've made an organizational decision that they're going to do, basically guaranteed roster bonuses, and or putting a basically their signing bonus, as I'm doing air quotes on a podcast, as a base salary. So you're just going to get more of a base salary, and you're spreading it out that way to where you're still getting, he's still getting $22 million no matter what of his contract. He's just getting it over 2 years instead of right up front.
Right. And to me, that you hit on one of the key points I want to make is you study the history of the Raiders over the last 20 years, right? 2 playoff years since 2002, since the Super Bowl, and then, of course, going to 2016 when Derek Carr's hurt and they're 1 game and out. So you look at that period, and it is littered with deals that guaranteed people money that then hamstrung the organization the next several years. You mentioned the Jerry Rice deal. All these other deals, including players that you won't even remember, or if you do remember, it's not going to be good memories. They were hamstrung by those deals because of that exact overspending. So with the Raiders, and you look at coming to Las Vegas now, let's remember that the Raiders now are the number 12 ranked franchise in the NFL as it comes to team value at $2 billion, almost $3 billion, $2.9 billion. This was in September of last year, so there's probably updated numbers. It's probably gone up from there. But if you look at that, they increased in 2017. They almost doubled their worth as a franchise because of the Las Vegas deal. Now they're here. Now they have Allegiant Stadium, which will generate more revenue. It hasn't generated a cent yet because it's not done, but they're going to generate revenue there. They have all of those big sponsorships, Kelly, that we've been seeing over the last few months. Not only the Allegiant Stadium deal, which is $20 million per year, all that stuff that's happening with these new revenue streams, which is the whole reason they left Oakland, because they couldn't do it there without a new facility. So they come here, they're doing that. And so because there's going to be a lot more money in the pipeline, doesn't mean you get stupid and spend it now. Instead, you look at the Raiders, anything can happen. I never say never, but the Raiders are being built to get a championship quality team. That's not going to be probably 2020, just guessing. But if you look at 21, 22, the window on which they're building with these young players, you start to spend the money when it's there, number one, but also you have a lot of holes to fill, Kelly. And if you go out giving massive bonuses, how are you going to fill those holes next year, right?
And it's also another thing. It's like if you catch Gruden and Mayock in an honest moment, they're not Super Bowl contenders this year.
No,
they know that. They're still filling holes. So if it comes in, say they have a great run this year, Carr is their quarterback, they decide this is what we're moving ahead with, we have a shot. I still don't think they're going to. I think they're going to stick to the way they're doing. I don't think you're going to see the huge signing bonuses, but you'll see bigger guarantees, just not the signing bonus right up front. Because like I said, why are you throwing out a ton of money right now when and the deals are all short? It's 3 years. 3 years for Littleton. He's still going to be under 30 when he hits free agency again. He's going to be in line for another big deal. Why are you throwing a ton of money for him if it's for 3 years when you may not be a competitor yet, and when you're ready to strike when the iron's hot, he's up for a new deal.
Yeah, and that's what I don't understand. I mean, you look at just to focus on a guy you brought up, Corey Littleton. He's going to make $11 million base salary, $500,000 roster bonus, $250K for workout bonuses, and so his cap number is about 11.7 for a guy that quality at a position where you had nobody is a great deal. And so that's why. Again, I'm not a team apologist here. I'm just saying I see people tweeting this stuff about them being poor, and I'm like, are you crazy? They just signed some really good short-term deals that's not going to prevent them from, going out, getting younger players in the draft and being able to sign those guys, which is what you want because those rookie contracts are so valuable. But then, like you said, Kelly, you start to build towards actually making a run at a championship, so that next year, the year after, you're not stuck with these big deals. And if you need to go get and pay for a really expensive player at a key position that's going to put you over the top, you have the ability to do it.
Yeah, the flex, and like I said, not getting stuck with that deal, having the flexibility It's nice, you know. Plus, also, I mean, if you look at all these contracts they sign these guys to, they're all tradable.
Yeah.
You know, it's like everybody, like when they saw the basically $8 million for the Mariota backup deal, people are like, "Whoa, that's a lot of money." I'm like, "Well, not really."
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of the bad backup contracts there are in the league right now, and I mean, $8 million if Mariota shows anything at all and somebody gets hurt, he's an asset.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly true. And I mean, you look at Kwiatkowski and his deal, you're talking about 6.78, somewhere around there with a 250. You're talking about a dead cap hit of like 10 million. So to me, they're structuring these deals so they have flexibility. And to your point about tradability too, you know, if you sign a guy like that, you sign a guy like Corey Littleton, and then something else comes up and you need to move that player, it's easy to do. I mean, you look at deals that we've talked about on the show many, many times. Like, for example, the Lions being hamstrung. Like, yes, I like Matthew Stafford, but they can't possibly trade him because no one would take on that cap hit and that money and what the cap hit the Lions would take, and then the money on the back end for Stafford. So I think that's why fans and people all around that follow the Raiders need to look at this thing holistically and say, you know what? No, it's not the Raiders that they're poor and they're not going to cash. I don't know why people equate spending a ton of cash with being a good thing.
Well, because everybody likes to spend a ton of cash, especially when it's not yours. But Raiders, like I said, Raiders fans the last few years have seen to where they've missed out on deals because of a money issue.
Yeah.
And I think that they just expected the second they mentioned the name Las Vegas, that was going to completely go away. You know, I mean, it's not like just because you have an opportunity to write a check doesn't mean you're going to automatically.
Right, exactly. And if we look at that, so the Raiders, as I said, number 12 valuation in the NFL. You have number 1, the Cowboys, 2 Patriots, 3 Giants, 4 Rams, 5 49ers, 6 Bears. So you look at those top teams, right? And a lot of that has to do with not only ownership and money. I mean, Jerry Jones has that kind of money. He can do whatever he wants. But at the same time, the revenue that is derived from those big media markets, from their stadiums, from all of those things that they have help with that. So 2 years from now, when the Raiders have been in Allegiant Stadium for 2 complete seasons, they're going to generate more than revenue. Their estimated revenue in 2019, $357 million. The Broncos at 446, just above them. And then you get into Eagles, Houston, Jets, and you get into those other ones that I mentioned. When you start to get towards the $500 million revenue marks, or at least mid to high fours, then you're in a different stratus. And the fact that the Raiders, who haven't even opened or moved to their stadium, have more money valuation than some of these franchises just shows you that they're about there. They're going to make more money, which means they can spend more money if they want to. But again, it doesn't mean spending money does not equate with being a championship team. The New York Jets, number 8, they have revenue of $475 million. They can spend more, right? Have they done anything with it?
And they've spent a lot of money.
Exactly. That's my point. And so you can spend money. It doesn't mean you're going to win. And going out and buying the most expensive free agent also doesn't mean that free agent, markets are set differently. We saw the cornerback market go crazy, right? The wide receiver market's in the tank because of the draft.
Yeah, and it's like you said, winning the offseason, everybody, oh, man, they spent X amount of dollars, like the Jets a few years ago on their third time with Revis. It's like they were going to be the big thing. So they spent all this money. Everybody fell apart. Everybody bombed. Hey, look, for the next 3 years, you're stuck with your cap hits. The Stafford point you brought up was really good because he would not be a Lion right now if it wasn't for a $32 million cap hit.
Exactly. Yeah, because they got to move on. They have more holes to fill. And even though Matthew Stafford, to me, is still a very good quarterback and in the right situation, I think could win, that franchise has been such a mess. They've now gone in a different direction with Matt Patricia. Whether that's going to work or not, we'll see. But they have so many needs. And that's where the Raiders are at. The Raiders are at, even the people who really wanted to go on from Derek Carr and they wanted them to sign Tom Brady and they wanted to do all this stuff. The point is, when you look at Carr's contract, how friendly that is, it would be prudent to give him another year, even if you have doubts from a financial standpoint. And I think that as fans, I know it's hard sometimes when we're fans of a sport or a team to look at things from a business perspective. But when you look at these offseason signings and the way they structure these deals, I think you almost have to.
mean, it's going to be kind of. I'm already kind of tired of hearing about like the new economy and how everybody's freaking about all this. What the economy is going to be like now with all the social distancing and what are businesses and everything going to look like. The NFL's not immune to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if everybody is going to be looking at this as like you said, the cornerback market went kind of nuts. You've seen some huge contracts. I'm wondering if coming up next you're going to see somebody like, well, what happens if something like this happens again? Is it going to affect the actual contracts you get up front?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a player, I want more. If I'm an owner, I want to pay less. It's always been like that, but now you have something to point at for your reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too, you'll look at here, Kelly, is the draft, right? So you have the draft. We know the Raiders, they addressed so many needs on defense, at least in some ways at linebacker, clearly, excuse me. And you look at cornerback, right? So they signed an Eli Apple. Okay, that's not going to excite anybody. He's probably not even going to be a starter, but they're starting to fill some gaps, knowing that in the draft they have capital there. Yes, they have no second round pick, but they have those 2 first round picks, and then they have the third round pick, so they can go out and fill some of those other spaces. And then, by the way, there will also be deals had after that happens. So why spend? A lot of people are going to blow their wad in free agency, and wow, you won free agency, and like we got an A+ from Mel Kiper, whoever we got a grade from. But the reality is that doesn't necessarily put you in a position to win or to go where you want to go. And so for me, that's where I look at it. So I'm always just caught off guard by people who think that you got to spend a lot of money. And then the other thing that comes up, Kelly, and I know Mark Davis, who I've been around a bunch of times and has always been a gentleman and very nice to us and accommodating, because of his haircut, because he's only worth $250 million personally. That he's some poor guy who doesn't have the money to run an NFL team. That completely discounts the business that is the Raiders and the money that they bring in. And oh, by the way, they just sold the land underneath their headquarters for a ton of cash, so they're actually sitting very nicely. That personal equation of Mark Davis to what the Raiders spend on players is also a bit asinine.
Yeah, you mentioned Mark Davis and the haircuts. No matter what he ever does, that's always going to be thrown out there.
Sure.
Yes, he's not a billionaire. He doesn't own Home Depot. He doesn't own an oil company. Yeah, you get that. But you just said it right there. His personal fortune is $250 million. that you can spread that out when you need to.
Yeah.
It's like NFL revenue, your TV deal alone basically covers your expenditures. I mean, and we can actually go and look at the Green Bay Packers financial numbers every year because they're basically owned by the city, so all that stuff's public. So you can see that there's plenty of money coming in for a team. And the Raiders fans are great, but what was coming in stadium-wise from when the new stadium opens, what they had in Oakland, is going to be such of a complete polar opposite. Those numbers are going to go back up, but I just don't think people should expect to see, once that starts to kick in, them start throwing money around like crazy.
No, and I mean, you look in the historical value of the franchise, 2015. So you're talking 5 years ago now. $1.4 billion was the value of the Raiders. Today it's 2.9. So you can see that trend. So if you're a fan, I understand it's been a long time. You've been long suffering. But the revenue that will be derived from the stadium, from all of the corporate partnerships, these founding partners that they have, the sale of the headquarters land, all those things, those will start to generate revenue. But again, they haven't even opened them yet. And so when that does start to happen, oh, by the way, the NFL is also, there was a story today from our good friends over at Sportsnot about the NFL is now is negotiating the media deals, right? So a bunch of these media deals are up. And so they're in the process of doing that, which means the NFL's value as an entertainment property on television in particular has continued to skyrocket. When people thought that the viewing was down because of the Colin Kaepernick stuff and all this other things, in some areas, yes, there was little quick hits here and there, but overall, out of the top 10 television programs in total every year, 6 or 7 of them are always NFL games. Some of them just regular season games. So you're going to see revenue for all the teams rise because of the new TV deal. We'll see what happens with all this virus crisis and all that stuff. Like you said, they're not immune to macroeconomic situations, but I think that's also going to generate the Raiders. The Raiders are going to get more attention being in Las Vegas, even though the media market is incredibly much smaller than it was in the Bay Area. They're the only show in town when it comes to football. So I think that in a couple years, this conversation will be different from a revenue standpoint, but that does not mean you have to go out and spend it. So we'll see. Now we do know, Kelly, that the Raiders are still looking for some positions to fill, right? They're still looking for perhaps another veteran wide receiver and definitely still looking at opportunities to improve the defensive backfield. Is there anybody else out there, and we'll talk more in depth about it Sunday, but is there anybody else out there at an affordable price, knowing that this is their strategy, that you could see them maybe making a jump at, especially if they end up trading a Gabe Jackson or releasing a couple players to free up cap space?
Well, I'll say, yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing. I think you're going to have to see them cut some people before they do anything else because they're pretty cap-strapped at this point.
Yep.
With the, I mean, yeah, kind of hate to see Gabe go, but that's about a $10 million bump right there, which pretty big hit for, a guy that's, had some injury issues and hasn't been playing much. I mean, that could open up a lot of space. To me, there's not really somebody out there that I'm like, oh man, they should go after that guy. They should get that guy. Before free agency started, I really wanted Trey Boston. Yeah. But some team actually decided, hey, he's been good at football for a while. Let's give him more than a 1-year deal. Yeah. So that was off the table. So yeah, I mean, you're looking at cornerback, safety, and like they need a number one wide receiver, and there wasn't one in this. So I don't even think picking up like a 4 or 5 in the wide receiver, I would do that because you can do that in the draft. Yeah. You can get a guy. You talk about getting somebody cheap. You don't get anybody cheaper than a 5th round pick in the draft. Right. And there's gonna be receivers in the draft in that 4th, 5th, 6th range that I like better than anybody that's a free agent right now.
Well, what about the defensive front? Because there's guys like, for example, Clowney, who is going to be expensive, but if there doesn't seem to be anybody rushing to sign him, because
he's the most overrated player in football.
but if you can get him on a 1-year deal because the market doesn't give him anything better, is that a kind of guy? It doesn't have to be him. It might be somebody else. Is there somebody out there, one of these names that if you can get on a 1-year deal where you're not going to be tied into a lot of money long term, that you'd be willing to take a chance on?
I mean, I don't understand why anybody would sign somebody to a 1-year deal unless you think you're a Super Bowl contender. So what's the what's the point of signing a guy on a 1-year deal if he does really, really well? You've priced yourself out of that market. It's like one-year deals to me is just something that you do. Or I mean, it's like they got Nelson Aguilar. Say he actually learns how to catch the football over the summer and has a monster year. Yeah. Congratulations. You now have to pay him. It meant nothing that he was on your team for the 1 year. I've never liked a 1-year deal unless you think that person is a depth piece or something you need to make a Super Bowl run. It seems pointless to me.
Or a stopgap, like I think the Eli Apple signing, right? I mean, it's kind of a prove it deal for him because even if he has a good year, he's not going to go from making $6 million a year to making 18. So why not take a risk on it, right?
I mean, who knows? Say he blows up this year. I mean, that's the thing. But like you mentioned, Clowney is like everybody's got this idea of what he was supposed to be, and that still hasn't left their head. Yeah, he's one of the best run stuffing defensive ends in football. He's not a big sack guy, and he wants to be paid like he's a big sack guy, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, of course, we're recording this on Tuesday, and we found out today Robbie Anderson's going to Carolina, where apparently new coach Matt Rule is attempting to recreate the entire Temple football team.
I saw that. Somebody had that. I mean, I knew about PJ and stuff like that, but I didn't realize that, that Temple football team was a very good against the spread football team, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, we'll see. And of course, we saw Cam Newton get released today, which of course 20% of Raider Twitter then says, "Oh, we're going to sign Cam Newton." It's like, no, no, you're not. But it'll be interesting to see where he winds up. We'll talk about that. Maybe we'll have a better idea on Sunday where he may end up. And we'll definitely, I think we'll climb on and do a live video here in the next day or two and talk about some of this as well. But it's interesting, Kelly. I think that, we're starting to see some of these mock drafts where now they think the Raiders are going to draft a cornerback at 12. I still think they go wide receiver at 12, and 19 could be a defensive back, or they could end up trading down if there's a partner there. You still see it that same way?
Yeah, I mean, there's no other position to me that they should look at, because they have a dire need for a number one wide receiver. And yes, this wide receiver class is deep, but it's not deep for your number one wide receivers. It's like, if you ask anybody who the top three receivers are, you get the same three names in some order.
Yeah.
If you ask for number 4, you get 10 different names. that just shows you how big of a difference there is from 3 to 4.
Right.
So if you have to go at 12 for a wide receiver if you want to get one of the top 3 guys, and if you need a number 1, I think you have to take a top 3 guy.
Yeah, no, that's that. I would agree with that, and we'll see how it all bakes out, because to me, that is their most glaring need. I mean, you still need cornerback and safety. So to me, there's nobody at 12. There's some very good cornerbacks and safeties, don't get me wrong, but versus one of those top 3 receivers, I couldn't see them making that trade-off. Could I see them taking one of those defenders at 19? Sure, if there's there. But other than that, I think that it's going to be wide receiver. So not much to me. Not much is going to surprise there, or I shouldn't say there won't be a surprise there in my view. But we'll see what ends up. We'll see how it ends up. But I do know this, that they will have enough cash to sign those guys, to complete their stadium, to complete their headquarters, you name it. So it'll be interesting. But I don't know, that Mark Davis is poor, and he's the poorest owner in the NFL and all this kind of stuff. It is also a national narrative. I don't think it'll ever go away until they are generating all kinds of cash and win. I think once they win, that goes away.
Even if they're generating cash, that's not going to go away. 'Cause it's like I said, he doesn't. That's the thing with most of the other owners. They have other businesses, and this is a side piece. It's hey, I own a football team. What do you have? And for Davis, for the Bidwells in Arizona, for the Browns in Cincinnati, I mean, the football is the business,
right?
So this is what they are, and this is what they do. So that narrative's never going to go away for the Davises, no matter what they make in Vegas, because they don't have that other thing to be like, okay, yeah, I only make this for my football team, but I own, Microsoft, or I own, it's every other owner has their main source of income is something else.
Yeah, no, you're right, absolutely, and this is the family business, a business that they bought in 1966 for $168,000, now worth $2.9 billion. And, Mark Davis does get the fun poked at him. But I'll tell you what, I've come to respect his individuality, if you want to call it that, because I'll tell you what, man, to be comfortable and be yourself without knowing that people make fun of it, and that you sometimes can be the butt of jokes, and that you don't necessarily fit in with the billionaires club, I think it's cool. I think it's very, it fits with his personality, which is like, hey man, this is my life. This team is my life. It was my father's life, and it's going to continue to be mine. So I respect that and appreciate it much more than I ever did in the past, especially when I grew up not liking the Raiders. So it's an interesting piece, and it'll fit well here in Vegas, where we have a very eclectic population and people, including a lot of people with money who are somewhat like Mark Davis, right, Kelly, that are kind of their own people, and they don't necessarily fit in with what you consider to be normal rich guys.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal out here, man. It's Vegas. You can kind of be whoever the hell you want to be, because nobody really cares.
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's like, because you walk down the strip, you walk down anywhere, you see weird and strange things all the time. So you don't even equate that to whether or not it's a money issue or just somebody being, So it's like you see so much weird. It's normal.
Yeah. And too, because you work in the service industry, and I did when I was in college here, And, you know, we would have guys, I used to work at a store where we sold some artwork, and you'd have these guys walk in that literally, I think 80% of you out there would say, oh, that guy's probably homeless. And the next thing, the guy's spending $280,000 on animation art, right? So you just never know who you're going to run into in Vegas. And yeah, people here don't care. It's very liberating. It really is a melting pot. You know, you have neighbors who are doctors, and then on the other side, they're bartenders. On the other side, they might be a cocktail waitress or a dentist. You never know. It's a great mixed bag of people here, and so Mark Davis fits in really well. Okay, man. So us being under, let's just call it what it is, house arrest, sort of. You said you were catching up on The Office. How's it going? Have you made it through more seasons, or where are you at, or did you give up and go to something else?
Oh no, I just finished. I just got through Pam's wedding. So I'm on season 6, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, literally, I've watched all this since Wednesday. So I mean, I'm just kind of hammering through them. But yeah, it's I'd never seen it. Everybody would talk about how good the show was, and it took a season and a half for me to kind of get into it. But man, when it hits its stride, this is a good show. It
really is a good show. That's why it lasted like it did, and why it has such a following. On the other hand, I've been watching, which I tend to do. I like to go back and watch old stuff I haven't watched. So I bought this this Blu-ray disc. It was all of the airport disaster movies from the 70s. So you have the first Airport, which is like, Then you have Airport 75, which is probably my favorite, right? Which has Charlton Heston and Karen Black in it. And then Airport 77, which is the one where the plane goes underwater, which is so ridiculously unrealistic. You have that one. It's got Jimmy Stewart in it and all these people. And then Airport 79, which is the Concorde, which isn't as exciting in it. But I've been running through those. So I'm watching Airport 75 with my 10-year-old who had strep throat. So we're sitting there in bed watching the movie the other night. I'm watching Airport 75. And all of a sudden there's a scene, and it's Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett is in Airport 75. I didn't even remember that. So it was kind of a cool little, even though at the time, I think 1975, it would have been on the Patriots, right? Yep. So he was in the movie, and I was just like, wow, this is so crazy that this connection. Took a picture of it and put it up on Twitter. But yeah, catching up on that stuff, man. I watched the kids wanted to watch the new Star Wars movie last night, or the latest Star Wars movie. And so I watched that, and I actually found some parts that I liked. But still found myself like you and I did when it first came out, saying, okay, how does that happen? How do they pass lightsabers through the thin air from one place to another? It still doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, basically he started getting rabbit ears, and because you saw with Lost, where he was on the message boards and everything, and he was hearing about people's theories and everything about so he started kind of putting that stuff into stuff that he hadn't thought of yet. I'm like, you have so much stuff in canon that you can work with. And now you're just making crap up as you go, like film by film. It just ruins it for me.
Yeah. No, I understand it. And, I'm one of those guys where outside of the prequels, where I thought, especially the first two, I like the third one. It just never resonated with me, even as a Star Wars fan. But I'm kind of the more, when I was a small kid, I was Star Wars all day, all night. But now I just kind of like enjoy watching Star Wars movies. So even the bad ones I can get through, and I don't get too upset about it. But the one thing I'll say is that watching this last movie, is Kylo Ren not the most, besides Boba Fett, is he not the most wasted character in the history of Star Wars? I mean, there was never any depth there. There was never understanding. Yeah, you got the redemptive quality at the end with him saving Rey, but overall he was like a nothing burger.
Yeah, I didn't like his character to begin with because I didn't need emo Darth Vader. I thought it was just a terrible character, so I didn't mind the fact they didn't use him much because I hated him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so pointless. He's supposed to be your big villain for these movies, and he was a complete waste.
Right. And he was such a bad villain, Kelly, that in the last movie they had to bring back a dead character to be the real villain.
Yeah, that you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And I would like a movie, or at least more of the movie on that planet they were at. That actually looked interesting.
Yes.
One of the few things in that movie that was interesting, and they did nothing with it.
No, it's the end and the big fleet and all that stuff. There was just, It was so wasted, and they tried to. You're right. I think we live in a time where in filmmaking, because fans have such a voice now with social networks and all this stuff, that you're right. I think directors, and especially the movie companies, I won't even say directors, they have such rabbit ears that they cow to these hardcore fans who aren't the majority of the people who are going to go see your movie anyway. And so what they try to do is they try to do too much all the time. So with these large movies, like some of the Marvel movies, the same thing. They try to do too much instead of actually just making a good movie with a good story that sticks to canon as much as you can. They try to please everybody, and in doing so, they end up really not pleasing anybody.
And I get it. It's all a money grab. I know that's all this stuff is at this point. And I understand that you do stuff like that to try to draw in the biggest audience and stuff that you can. But at a certain point, you got to be like, okay, this is just stupid. You know what? You can only go out on such of a limb before, the fan servicey stuff gets so over the top. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. Those people are buying a ticket anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Well, there you go. A little bit of movie talk at the end of this podcast. Of course, there is a Star Wars theme connection with the Raiders because people are calling Allegiant Stadium the Death Star. By the way, it's interesting, too, that people who don't like the Death Star name for the stadium that use the same argument every time. Well, Death Star was blown up. And I'm like, yeah, but the Death Star is an ominous place, right? So I think the name still fits. I don't know that I'll ever call it the Death Star. I'll call it Allegiant Stadium. I don't know about you. I like the Big Al better, actually. But we'll see. Fans have a voice.
Yeah, the Death Star, because that's what they were calling Dallas's stadium at first. That's why I don't like it.
Yeah,
I like the Black Pearl, man.
Yeah, the whole pirate ship thing.
Yeah, I thought the first Pirates movie was good. The rest of them were kind of dumb.
Yeah,
but just the idea, because the Black Pearl, it kind of fits, and I kind of like it.
Yeah, all right, man. Well, everybody's got opinions on it, and we'll keep watching and see. At the end of the day, when they start playing there and they get through a season, something will stick, and it might end up being something we haven't thought of. All right, Kelly. Well, man, I'm going to let you go, and we'll rejoin. We're gonna set up some video, and we'll do a live YouTube video here sometime this week, just to catch up with people and just to chit chat and take questions at large on just about anything. We'll see what people can throw at us. All right, brother.
All right, man.
All right.
You know where to find me.
I do. But I'm being told not to come there. I can only just do it from a distance. All right, for Kelly Kreiner and for our usual co-host on the radio station, Chaz Osborne, I'm Scott Branson. Don't forget to watch our social media channels. We'll be doing much more of this because we're all sitting here, we're all in the same boat together, and we'll produce more content as things happen. Even though news isn't exactly heavy, there's always something to talk about when it comes to Raiders football, and you could do it right here with Silver and Black. Make sure you check out the website, silverandblacktoday.com. Go subscribe, hit notifications all on our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of those live videos. You'll get notified when we do go live. Also, Sunday, we continue to do our show. Thanks to the folks at CBS Sports Radio. Despite everything shutting down, we will be live every Sunday, still from 8 to 10 a.m. So join us. A guest list coming out. We'll have another great show this week, so do that. For Kelly Kreiner, for Chaz Osborne, I am Scott Branson. Take care, everybody, and may the autumn wind always be at your back. Bye-bye.